if evolution is correct, it would actually implode upon itself. It would actually negate rationality. So I mean,
yeah, I know what he says, and he's totally goofy about this. He's basically saying that he's saying by definition, evolution is for basically survival of the fittest. It's about filling an ecological niche. It is not about determining truth. And so there's no reason to believe in evolution that humans would evolve to determine truth, which I think is a really silly argument, because evolution is really an arms battle, and the development of the mind is part of that. And in this struggle for survival, we have to develop our mind, and that involves developing truth, because science, for example, gives us the best weapons, like nuclear technology, and nuclear technology is hardcore science. So to me, it's very obvious that evolution does, I mean, our brain power and truth seeking does help evolution.
But
it's just kind of a silly argument from him.
It's not a silly argument. You're actually negating what you're saying. If you say Dr. Meyer, I think it was Meyer, who died a couple of years ago, is a world authority on evolution. He said that evolution is a historical science, in the sense that we have to go back and look at history. If you look at Francis Ayala, who's a philosopher and a biologist, and he talked about in the 1950s where the PhD students in biology were told not to use the word words like design or purpose in talking about biological structures, because they didn't want to give a sense about history had meaning or history had purpose, because after 1950s they were sick and tired of these historical meta narratives, and evolution itself is a historical meta narrative. I
agree with that. Yeah, I agree that evolution is a good alternative origin story.
So it's a view of history, an understanding of history, and in that understanding of history, what you don't seem to realize is you're imploding on yourself every time you use an argument against me for the existence of evolution. You're using rationality. You're implying that there is meaning to rationality. You're implying lots of these things that you're smuggling in, which you don't get from that position, because how can you get meaning? How can you get rationality from natural selection and mutation? Is natural selection an intelligence? Is it a meaning? Is it a purpose? Or is it just a blind force? And what you're doing is you're bringing in words, comporting words with meaning, purpose, rationality to a blind force, and that is your problem. And you're trying to have your cake and eat it philosophically, scientifically, and logically. That's my position.
Well, there is intelligence in a lot of the higher order evolution. For example, mammals, they go, there's migration, that takes intelligence. There's mating rituals, that takes intelligence. You know how animals select their mates. So it's not just all blind mutation only. There is a mental part to natural selection in the higher animals, at least. Probably not with the lower things like bacteria and viruses, obviously.
But you can't have your cake and eat it. The moment you give any meaning to any specific part of reality within creation, whether scientific or rational, you've negated your own position, because how do you get from a historical process that has no meaning, that has no rationality, so every argument that you're going to use against me, what you're doing is you're smuggling in a historical process that doesn't give you that foundation.
Well, I would just say we both agree that logic is good and true, and the reason why, from my naturalistic viewpoint, is because it works. That's the reason why we use logic. So there's nothing contradictory about logic and naturalism. Just like I said before, logic, numbers, time, these are all deep philosophical concepts that people argue about whether they even exist or if they're just things that humans use as models that work. You know, for example, like we used to say, obviously, space and time are two different things. Then Einstein came up with his theory of general relativity, where he said they are not separate. There's a space-time fabric, and you can warp space and time by huge objects with the gravity. So space and time actually warps. So there's a lot of weird stuff out there that we are figuring out from science that totally don't make any sense from us, because we did not evolve to understand that stuff. We evolved in our middle world, as Dawkins would say, not in the small world or the large world. So that's why we don't understand things like quantum mechanics. They don't make sense to us because we don't operate on the quantum level. But science is a lot of weird things like that, and we accept it because of evidence and logic. We accept it because it works. We can make predictions. We can make new scientific instruments. We can use all this stuff. And that's why we believe in logic, because it actually works.
Well, I know that. I understand where you're coming from. And, you know, the issue of pragmatism, you know, because it works, it's valuable. I understand that. But, you know, even in pragmatism, there is 3-4 different views of pragmatism. There's the Dewey pragmatism, and Rory pragmatism and stuff like that. The issue here, I know I'm laboring it, but the issue, what I'm trying to get at is, if you look at history as a meta-narrative, either history is rational or it's not rational. And what you're trying to do is say, whenever you're using the scientific method, whenever you're bringing any evidence, what you're really doing is you're saying, look, I haven't really got a basis for rationality for history, really. The historical flow is mutations and natural selection. Mutations, I'm smuggling in that it's an intelligence. It's not. It's a force. And therefore, that's the issue. That's the issue. So every time you're using logic, reason, saying from a pragmatic argument, that's your ultimate foundation. So it all comes down to that. If you look at the Enlightenment, if you look at all these debates with Dawkins, you, and I've listened to loads of your debates. I've listened to lots of the debates about evolution and creation and all these things. It ultimately comes down to this one question: the nature of rationality and the basis of rationality. That's my, you know, I mean, I have a degree from Nazarene Theological Seminary, but it's accredited. It's accredited from Manchester University, and I like to engage. I do like to engage, and if you send me stuff, I'll read it and I'll look at it. But I do like to read wider, and my understanding of history is that this is the key question of all questions: rationality.
But you know, one of the funny things though is, like, when people like you say that you believe in rationality and rationality comes from God, and yet you reject evolution, that means that you believe animals appeared instantaneously by a miracle. Like, for example, there was a time where there's no humans, and then boom, all of a sudden there's a time where you have adult humans. Well, if you looked at that adult human as soon as it was made, based on logic, you would be wrong, because it looks like that human, Adam and Eve, it looks like they're reproductive age, like you know, teenagers, but they're only 1 day old. You just you're just blowing away logic there. That's counter logic. That is God being a deceiver, because it looks like humans were around a long time. I mean, and they even have a language. Like in the Bible, the Adam and Eve had a language. So you're blowing away. You cannot believe in inductive logic, because right there it blows away inductive logic. You can't trust your eyes. You can't trust anything, because you may as well believe that you were just created 5 minutes ago or even 5 seconds ago with all your memories intact. How would you know? Maybe God. You can read a holy book where it says everything was created 5 seconds ago, including your memory. You just got to believe it on faith. There's no way to disprove it. I think, and then you say, and then you would say, oh, well, God's rational too, by the way. It's like, well, he can't be rational and believe in these radical miracle stories, because they blow away logic.
No,
inductive logic.
I mean, I have to hold my hands up. This is your expertise. It's not my expertise. Is in historical Jesus studies. Your expertise is you debate specifically on these topics. So I don't want to cross swords on the specifics because you'll know a lot more than me, and I'd need a few weeks to do the research. But what I would know from an academic point of view is that, you know, if you've got data and evidences and scholarship, and you want me to look at it, I will look at it and I'll engage with it. And anybody, whoever they are, should be willing to engage with any data or evidence. And if you put a collection of articles on the table for me and want me to go away and read it, I will read it and come back at you, and we can debate on the specifics of that. But what I would say is that when we're looking at so far back in time, that I think a lot of it comes down to interpretation of that data. So, like, I've seen you debate other people, and I think you've given a good account of yourself, and you've said some really good things that I need to look into. But also, I've heard some of the other guys. I can't, Rayner or whatever his name was. You know, he gave a different he gave a different spin sometimes on some of the things you said. I think he gave a good account of himself sometimes. But yeah, I would agree that there is if there would be some evidences to comport with the biblical data, but I would also say that we wouldn't have all the data, so long as there's a plausibility structure there that is worth holding on to, that has some data. Then I would say I can hold on to that. And my plausibility structure would be who Christ is, the nature of morality and sin, and then creation in terms of the complexity of the cell and things like that. So I would say there is a plausibility structure on some of these things, questions that you bring out on, like the flood and things like that. That's not my kind of style of apologetics, but I mean, they're good questions, but I'd have to research all that personally, you know. But I wouldn't say, what I would say is that, you know, a lot of it I think is interpretation of the data sometimes, a lot of the time. So for example, when we're looking back at the flood and catastrophe, you know, there are some creationist scholars, even though you might not agree with them, who were people in the scientific community who were doing this stuff, and they got converted and they've seen a different light, but they're seen as like hacks. It's like in the historical Jesus studies, the atheists, from an academic point of view, the atheist community are nowhere in the running when it comes to scholarship as compared to the conservative evangelicals or conservatives. For example, like N.T. Wright, you cannot compare N.T. Wright to a Richard Carey. You cannot compare an N.T. Wright to an Earl Doughty or an N.T. Wright to Roger Price. So, but does that mean to say that I won't look at atheist scholars or not consider that they haven't got some important things? Sometimes it's just about interpretation, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. You have a high estimation of N.T. Wright. I'm not.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, we went way over our 30 minutes. Next time we'll do this, we have to figure out how to. We got a lot of dropped video there. We'll have to figure out how to do this without dropping video.
Well, if you want to do it again, and if you want to give a specific topic, let me know.
Okay.
And it'd be helpful. Then I could, if you send me the stuff that you want me to read, I can then engage with it properly rather than just not engaging with it. I'll engage with it if you want me to think it through, and I'll try. And
one of the topics we could talk about is, I sent you the link to my essay I wrote, and one of those was I talked about how the gospel is nonsense, and so that might be an interesting topic to talk about. Okay,
should we do that next time then?
Yeah, but first we got to figure out how to get this technically to work out, because this was way too choppy.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll stop broadcasting in a minute, and then have a good Christmas. And if we get in touch with each other in the new year, and then you can give you a bit of time to research it, and I'll research it, and then we can debate it again. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Have a happy holidays.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bernie. Take care, mate.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the opportunity, mate.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks a lot, man.